Welcome everyone to the Crypto Art Week, a panel discussion about NFT and its impact on the fashion industry. My name is Bettina von Schlippe. I'm the publisher of Vogue Singapore, and I'm delighted to moderate today's session with a group of industry leaders, CEOs, and founders from the digital fashion world. Please meet Marjorie Hernandez de Vogelsteller, founder and managing partner at LUKSO, co-founder and chief product officer at the Dematerialised, and our female power couple from DressX, Daria Shapovalova and Natalia Modenova, and as well Kerry Murphy, founder and CEO at the Fabricant. Ladies and gentlemen, before we start, could you give our audience an idea about your motivation and intentions? So why did you decide to enter the digital fashion market in the first place? Can we maybe start with Daria?
Sure. So basically, I've been working in the fashion industry for more than 15 years. And as we all know, fashion usually starts with the notion of physical item. And we just started to iterate and think how to break this idea of the physical item. And we understood that actually we and our new generation, and I have a son of 8 years old, living in the world of digital and playing games and playing with social media, playing with ourselves. And while we are creating the content and when we are talking this language of social media and other different mediums online, we actually sometimes don't need physical clothes at all. And we can only live with digital copies or digital inventions and digital clothes in general as a notion. And that's how it all started. And actually, that's a great way of how to save the resources for the planet as well, because we were coming from the traditional business and we saw lots of overconsumption, overproduction, and we're like, maybe there should be like at least 1% of fashion clothes that can just exist in digital. And that's what led us to start DressX.
Yeah, perfect. Natalia, you met each other where?
Oh, we met each other back in Ukraine, being journalists, and then launching the Fashion Week, the traditional Fashion Week, Mercedes-Benz Key Fashion Days, and then there was a next endeavor, the showroom based in Paris for connecting designers and retailers, and that's how we learned a lot about the industry from different angles, from the show production, from the production of the collections, and from the retailers, and yeah, that's led us to the idea that something should be changed, and something is not probably perfectly working, and time has changed, but the industry has not changed, and that's a perfect time to bring newness to it.
Yeah, I think we will definitely discuss this a little bit later. Kerry, you positioned the Fabricant as a digital fashion house, and which reminded me when I heard this first of the traditions of the big French maisons. So was your objective to bring craftsmanship and art et métier into the digital world?
Yes, absolutely. Our intention has always been to create a digital twin of the fashion industry while doing it completely different how the fashion industry is actually doing it. I myself come from outside of the fashion industry, and I've seen the digital transformation of the film and visual effects industry in 90s, early 2000s, and seen everything that has happened from a tool innovation and how the industry has leaped forward. And I thought fashion was fairly digital already before I jumped in it in 2016, only to realize that it's actually extremely complicated, super analog, and quite fragmented industry. So it gave us a nice initiative and intention to actually completely rethink of how does a traditional fashion house actually work, and then just make it a digital fashion house, which is not only about focusing on the craftsmanship of the fashion construction, the understanding of patterns, seams, stitches, materials, and all the other complexities that actually go into designing fashion, but also actually having a technological stack behind it powering production, doing optimizations and automation, building tools that actually allow for the creatives to be more creative, building tools that make it faster, and really allow us to completely rethink of how are we going to be engaging with fashion down the line in the future. And actually the biggest challenge that we're facing is actually tying that business model into our company. I always say that we want to be excellent creatively, we want to be excellent technically, and we need to have a very solid business model in order to be able to scale our business. And we're blind believers that we're actually going to be the biggest fashion house in the world simply because we're more scalable. So just creating that one item can be infinitely copied, unlike the traditional physical fashion industry, which is all about, if you want to grow as a company, you need to create more physical items, you need to be selling more physical items. And there's numbers like that the fashion industry creates 100 billion items per year, which is just ridiculous amount of physical items going into this world just for 8 billion people. So that's not sustainable in the long run. Hence the sustainability side is a big thing of what we're focusing in on as well, because we only have to worry about the energy sources that go into our computers, in our servers, in our rendering, so on and so forth. So we're really trying to figure out how can we reduce physical clothing simply by introducing better business models and a more engaging interactive experience that's a digital fashion experience. So the consumers are actually more excited about digital only clothing rather than physical clothing. And I'm not saying that physical clothing will completely disappear. I'm just saying that people will need less physical clothing simply because we can engage more with digital only clothing.
Yeah. I guess that it's very important, the whole conversation about sustainability, of course, is driving the conversation in the fashion industry for a few years. So obviously, those who believe in technology did do the next step. And speaking about technology, of course, Marjorie, and your background is a bit different. You wear multiple hats. I understand that you come from LUKSO, which is a blockchain provider, and then you invented or you designed Dematerialized. Can you share a little bit the evolution and intention for building these companies?
Yeah, with pleasure. I think, when Fabian and we started LUKSO back I ideated it first in 2017 and officially started in 2018. We were just incredibly passionate about the idea of bringing blockchain technology outside of the finance world and kind of starting creating the tools and applications that would support, what we saw coming about this new creative economy. And it's an economy that is powered by creative goods and not necessarily by financial instruments. So we definitely wanted to create the tools that would allow those people to interact with the blockchain. Because at the point in time, and still a little bit today, still blockchain technology is quite inaccessible, and it's not necessarily a plug and play type of technology that you can just integrate yourself in an easy fashion. So that's kind of was our motivation and still is today, to create that accessibility and create the tools that will empower creators. And that was, the biggest motivation for us for digital goods in general, and understanding that a digital good, and once we spend more time in digital and virtual environments, the ownership of those digital goods is super important. And how do we own a digital good that doesn't exist in the physical world? And at this point in time, the one way that we have to have digital uniqueness and own digital goods is through blockchain technology. Either through the forms of a digital token that can represent a financial instrument, or the membership of a club, or loyalty to a brand, or can also represent something that is not divisible. There is a non-fungible token that is should mirror kind of like what the real products are in real life, that you cannot divide them. It would be a shame to kind of cut our Chanel handbags in half to share them. So the NFTs represent that, right? It's an asset that cannot be divided in sub pieces, but that doesn't mean it cannot be co-owned. It can still be co-owned by a group of people. So, that ability of owning digital goods is kind of is unprecedented, right? And it's a big revolution. And I think that opens the doors and the gates for a complete new economy to emerge. And, you know, when we see, you know, creators like DressX, you know, who come from the fashion world, creating a digital store in Decentraland, you know, the world has changed, right? And all of a sudden, you know, the way you experience fashion and the avenues for experience fashion are just relatively different than they used to be. So I think understanding the digital transformation that goes beyond, you know, how we understood the Web 2.0 around like e-commerce and communication. Now we're moving to that Web 3.0 that is really around the transaction of value and the transfer of value, and really taking ownership around the things where we invest our time and our money on the web. So those are the things that were the motivation. And obviously, you know, when we were building LUKSO, we are building so much like very deep technology that is meant to power an array of different applications. I was just obsessed with the fact that we could build a marketplace. And my co-founder Fabian was like, well, we're already doing enough, so we shouldn't build the marketplace. And then I met Karina, my co-founder at the Dematerialised in a conference in Paris, and we very quickly connected. And then we had the same vision around, you know, digital goods and digital fashion goods. And then we decided to start the Dematerialised literally 3 weeks before the lockdown in February 2020. So it was a very interesting experience. The good thing, because I didn't have anything else to do in my life, like everybody else, it was not so bad that I had the jobs all of a sudden. So it was manageable.
Yeah, I think we are all driven by passion and love for this industry. To be honest, you know, COVID has changed dramatically as well the perception and what we want to do next in fashion. It was the same for us in a way that we launched last year only, Vogue Singapore, and literally, you know, I wanted to bring something to Singapore as well that is not only a fashion magazine. It's beyond the editorial work. The editorial, by all means, is very powerful. This is the backbone of our business. So we have 28 editions all over the world that reach over 1.3 billion people. But for Singapore, it was important to position it a bit different. So with innovation and fashion, and include the Vogue Foundation, the Vogue Talent Prize, the Vogue Innovation Prize to support fashion entrepreneurs. And I had the pleasure to work with some of you already, and I'm really seeing so much potential for the development in this digital fashion direction. So you see, NFTs have the potential to be a game changer, right? We spoke about this earlier. So definitely for the creators, but will they be accepted from the key players and the industry, and most important from the consumers? So Marjorie, just to ask one more time, because I guess there will be people from the fashion community as well following this panel, and there are always like a bit difficulties to understand clearly the definitions of what do I actually own when I buy an NFT.
Yeah, that's a super good question, and you know, depends almost in case by case. But technically, what you own is the access to the smart contract that represents that NFT. Mm-hmm. So it's the ability of transferability and ownership of that specific smart contract, and whatever amount of information or content is attached to that NFT is what you own, right? Then the bigger question comes: what happens if somebody, for example, will copy the digital, whatever it might be, if it's a picture, a 3D garment, or whatever? And that's just the same way it works in the real world, right? If you can see something, you can potentially copy it, but that doesn't mean that you own it, right? So for example, when Kerry issues a garment by the Fabricant, and he does it on the blockchain, he issued the NFT under the identity of the Fabricant. You know, there's a chain of verifiability that you can check that actually he's, you know, the Fabricant's profile issued a specific NFT. So somebody could potentially replicate the 3D asset, but they cannot replicate the NFT, right? They could counterfeit NFTs, but there will be only, and there should be only one account that is verifiable as the profile from Kerry and the Fabricant and any other creator. So that ability to check what is the source of a specific good, what is the source of that NFT, and then having the ability to actually transfer it. So it's like the rights to own it and transfer that you are receiving with the NFT. The part that is a bit of a, it is a bit of a technical challenge, is the part of what is exactly, this is some of the things that LUKSO is working on as well. It's like, where's exactly certain files sitting? Like, is the NFT giving me access to a specific source files, for the files are stored in a different place? They're stored in a decentralized storage. They're actually stored in a centralized database that belong to the company that created it. Like, exactly how the architecture behind the accessibility of the content from the NFT, it needs to be quite defined and standardized. And this is something what LUKSO puts a lot of effort into, but it's that ability of transferring that it's the key.
Yeah, and
I hope it makes sense.
And that you can't change an NFT, correct?
Well, yes and no, right? Like, you could change, you could update certain things, right? And this is the beautiful thing, because it's a little bit like a computer program. You could say, this amazing NFTs issue, by the Dematerialised, in a year from now, we will airdrop you something, or we will give you something, or that NFT will give you access to something, or let's assume the NFT is not for a digital good, but it's for a physical good, for a good that exists in the real world. All of a sudden, the brand has more information around the supply chain, and they want to add some information. They could add something, but technically, you shouldn't be able to either change the supply, because that's part of like the economics of it. And you cannot delete it. So you cannot retrieve it once it's not on your ownership anymore, right? So if a brand has issued an NFT, they cannot start like deleting it. It's a big issue in the computer and in computer games, that sometimes, gaming companies just delete characters, or, if the company will go bankrupt or delete the game or start updating the software behind the game, all of your goods that you have in there, they will be lost with the game, which can be really heartbreaking in certain points in time. So you really want to make sure that you own your digital goods, and you have access, and they are platform agnostic, which is the one of the strongest value propositions about the ownership of NFTs.
Yeah, so there's a lot of benefits by all means. So if we see this, all the advantages, then the question to Kerry maybe, are NFTs the future of fashion? Is this really what we need to embrace and develop?
Well, we definitely need to embrace it, and we definitely need to develop it. If it's the future, I would call it one of the futures, so a future of fashion. It's the future for the Fabricant, absolutely. For us as a digital-only fashion company who deals only with digital assets, to Marjorie's story, we need all of that. We need to allow for ownership of the assets that we're selling, because that's the only way we can truly replicate, let's say, the trends of the fashion industry. That's the way we can create rare items, limited editions, drop culture, like all the things that are really kind of focused around the scarcity of items from the fashion industry itself. That's what we need for our company too, because it's their true value in this kind of unlimited item that everybody can access and do whatever they like with it. Yes and no. I mean, we give away free files on our website too. We want everybody to have access to digital-only fashion, because we want digital-only fashion to be democratic as well. But we also want to be a company, and we also want to introduce scarcity to that, because that's what people like. And I'm also a big fan of rare editions, and big collector of rare editions in my physical life, big collector of rare editions in my digital life. And that's what we need to enable for a company like ours, is that there is that access and ownership. And the two other keywords that we use a lot is utility and interoperability, because you definitely do want people to have that one item and engage with it in multiple different ecosystems. And also to Marjorie's point, which is like, if a game goes bankrupt or decides to just quit the game, that asset that you bought is lost, you know, so that whatever amount of money that you put into that game is just, you know, goes down the drain. You actually want to enable that if you buy something that it's actually yours, because right now it's not yours. All the stuff that you buy in games, you know, you can literally go through the terms and conditions and say like, this item that you put money into is actually not yours. It's from the game itself, you know, to give you the kind of it's giving you the illusion that you are the owner of it, but you're not. And that's what I absolutely love about, you know, the crypto world, the blockchain world. It's allowing for this idea of ownership around digital assets that, you know, you can buy the Fabricant dress, and, you know, if we as the Fabricant decide to quit, or we get bought out, or we just say like, okay, we don't want to do this anymore, that those people who actually bought the items can still hold on to the items and see the value in those items. And I think that's kind of the big USP from the blockchain world that's really going to accelerate the digital only fashion industry. So we're really just kind of waiting for that mainstream adoption. You know, right now we're kind of living in this niche world, but I think everybody on this panel is a true believer that, you know, the kind of crypto, the NFT blockchain space will be mass adopted sooner than later. And once it does, you know, that's what kind of like puts us into a really good position as the, let's say, the early pioneers in this industry.
To be, you know, mainstream and more mass market oriented, of course, then my next question is, what makes a good fashion NFT? So, Natalia, do you have a recipe?
Well, I have some case, and actually that's very fast developing space. So every recipe is evolving every day. But definitely this should be something that is engaging, and this should be something that provides you the utility. That's why we are focusing on giving as much utility to the digital fashion and digital fashion assets as possible. And we started with the first use case of dressing up the people on their photographs, so updating their look with digital fashion. And the next use case that will be introduced is augmented reality fashion that can be applied in the real time, and also that can be applied on the videos. So that is also engaging content. But of course, the limited editions are great, and that's what blockchain technology provides, as well as transparency, because that's also something that is missing in traditional fashion world, but blockchain technology provides this opportunity to show where the item comes from. Of course, for digital item, it's information about the creator, about the previous owners, which sometimes can also add value to the item itself. So basically utility, uniqueness, limited edition, those are the hashtags for the successful NFT.
Because I'm wondering, you know, we have seen recently examples of key members of the fashion industry. They're all testing NFTs, right? So I've seen Marjorie, I saw Kate Moss, but really with mixed results, I have to say. So it seems that the establishment or the classical fashion industry has not found like the right spin how to work with NFTs. Daria, maybe you have some additional examples, or you know, because you've worked in the fashion industry for such a long time, in the classical fashion industry. So what would be your advice for them?
I think the main advice would be to step in the game for all the fashion houses that are still not there, and don't either understand something about NFT and digital fashion space in general. But if talking about the NFTs and addressing to what Natalia has said and all of the other speakers here, that like the point of luxury is about the scarcity, right? And it's about uniqueness and exclusivity. And if we can transcend that using blockchain and tech, that actually gives it kind of one more addition or layer of this luxury, because the item can be created in a physical version and have its digital version as well. So I believe here, I remember being at the presentation of Apple Watch, which was like 7 years ago in Florence at the Conte Nast Luxury Conference, where the people from Apple were presenting the watch, and all the people from like traditional luxury and watch industry were watching at this event happening, and they were a little bit concerned because it's like the Apple Watch that can kill the entire business of Patek Philippe, Cartier, and etc., etc. It was a very interesting tension between the tech giants and between the fashion giants. But in the end, they found a way how to work, and everyone understood that actually both industries will exist. People will have Apple Watch and Patek Philippe all together, the same person, because they're just used for various use cases. So I believe as soon as all the fashion players will understand that nothing is killing their business, but actually everything just adds, like both NFTs and all the digital fashion in general, if it's not even created as NFTs. So it will be more adoption. And as Kerry mentioned, we all believe in that and building the future and helping all the other stakeholders to be a part of it.
So the recipe then would actually be collaborations, correct, at this point?
Yeah, collaborations, love, as always, you know, it drives everything.
To add to this point, I believe that every brand will have this category in their proposition, in their value proposition of this digital fashion, of this screenwear, of this virtual fashion. Because think about like 20 years ago, like 10 years ago, and look what happened with sneakers. It was just a sportswear, right? And now every brand has sneakers in their category. So digital fashion will be just a category for every brand, and the earlier they will start, the better. So all this like experiments with using digital fashion in a marketing purposes is the first steps towards that, but definitely that's just the new category that is getting born. And there is a statistic from Barclays Bank that 9% of purchases of clothing in the UK happen for the sake of content creation. And if all this 9% of 1.3 trillion fashion industry will be turned into digital, that's a great market for every brand to participate.
Yeah, by all means. I mean, I can tell you we are adding on categories, you know, to our editorial content, and this is innovation, technology, and NFTs. So we're in the middle of obviously the transition, and as well finding ourselves in a position where we strongly feel of informing everyone, you know, from the readers, the industry itself, to be more in the know about what is happening, and literally then seeing the opportunities and yeah, trying out new investment options. So, but the challenges for the industry, for the fashion industry, is that the whole metaverse, from my point of view, seems to be rather, I would say, relaxed about copyright issues. I've seen latest examples such as the baby Birkin, right? So Hermes actually has nothing to do with these collaborations. Do you think that this has to change to make the big brands commit to the metaverse? Maybe Marjorie or Kerry?
Yeah, I think, you know, this is a bigger, you know, this is a bigger question around the fashion industry itself, kind of like how you define IP in, you know, within designs, right? And we know this is a big topic because if you change things just slightly, you can say you're not in copyright infringement, etc. So it's like a very tricky, already in the existing traditional fashion industry, the issue around copyright. I think in the digital world, there is, let's say, more, it's easier, I guess. The culture is a bit more open to just take things and replicate them, create them. There's an ease around that. Obviously, it's also way easier to replicate a digital Birkin than do a physical Birkin, a fake Birkin in real life. But I don't know if the game industry needs to change. I think what we need to have is, once you have, for example, Hermes issuing digital Birkin bags, then there will be a clear differentiation between the real ones and the fake ones. So I think they need to also take it a bit with humor. I think it's also very flattering that somebody took the effort to create a digital Birkin. But I think, you know, it's part of how digital technologies work, that it just makes it quite simple to produce, you know, it's simpler to produce goods and put them out into the world. But at the same time, it's also easier to verify where those things came from. So I think it's not so much of an issue around IP as it is from authorship and having the ability of still owning, you know, the authority to saying we are the authors of this specific garment. So I think all they have to do is participate, right? I think this is something that's a fight that you will always lose. You just have to participate, enter the market, start learning. I think the biggest challenge the fashion industry will face is a knowledge barrier, right? Because they don't come from the gaming world, and the gaming world is quite complex, right? Producing games is really complex, and the intelligence behind it is also the knowledge behind it is quite specific. So I think it will come down more to understanding of where actually they are operating, and all of a sudden their products live in this different reality dimension that they don't really understand. And, you know, it comes down to, as Daria and Natalia were saying, around partnerships, collaboration, work with the people that know, you know, and as Daria said, it is additive. Like, it's not necessarily that the digital fashion world will take over and destroy the physical fashion world, but they do need to adapt, right? When a new technology emerges, you either adapt or you will lose a portion of your market. Mm-hmm. So it's about coming in, taking the knowledge. There will be an extremely high demand for talent, right? There is not infinite amount of game developers. There's no infinite amount of digital fashion designers. So there will be a tremendous demand for the talent. And I think we are transitioning and the world just have changed. So we've been buying the same products for a very long time. And now this is the first time that literally as Natalia was saying, the product category has dramatically shifted. And this is something where they need just to adapt and partner. And then all of us here are some of the right partners for to solve some of those problems.
Yeah, definitely.
Can I just add to that, Bettina?
Yeah.
Just a few thoughts. Again, like if you go into the nitty-gritty of the contracts and the terms and conditions with software, for instance, like the 3D software we use for creating clothing, basically the software states that whatever we do in that software does not belong to us, belongs to the software company itself. Like if you truly want to get like very granular on the legalities of it. And a lot of people actually like holding back development because of that, simply because, you know, they feel like that their IP will be taken away from them. And to Marjorie's point, you know, like, should we already be worrying about counterfeit and forgeries at this stage when they don't really exist? They will exist at some point, but, you know, let's figure out the problem when it actually comes. And you can look at the music industry, for instance, when music went digital, like all the pirating that happened, or like all the digital rights that Apple tried to introduce into music, and they just made the user experience crap, and the consumer just didn't want to take it. They'd rather actually go pirate something because it was faster, it was easier, it was free, than have to go through all the legalities of iTunes, for instance. But then what happens? Spotify comes along, makes the user experience great, makes it accessible for everybody. And all of a sudden, I'm super happy to pay, you know, 10 euros a month to listen to all the music that I want. You know, like I pirated music throughout my whole youth just because it was, it's in the past. I went to jail.
We all did it. We all did it. We all did it, Kerry.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with Netflix. You know, like pirating movies has been massive, and then all of a sudden comes Netflix along, and people are happy to pay for that service. So it's going to be the same for fashion. We just need to make that experience so engaging that people will actually want to pay for the experience, you know, and not have to go through all this like trouble to do counterfeit items. And the people that will want to do counterfeit items, they can. You know, that will be their given right, but they're not going to be able to participate in the community. They're not going to be able to participate together with the brands. They're not going to be able to participate in this kind of like a democratic way of the big vision that, you know, we're all embodying, you know. So it will be there. We're going to be able to challenge it when it actually comes. But let's just focus on the, let's say, the bigger challenges that we have for now. And then when we're in a really good stage, we can start looking at how do we actually go against pirating of digital clothing. But yeah, I will be super happy the day I see somebody who actually did a copy of what we do or started pirating our stuff. I think that will be a proud moment, because then I feel like that we've actually made it.
Okay, in a few months' time, I will be in the next panel and remind you about this.
Well, we've had this discussion for years and it hasn't happened yet, so I welcome it.
Kerry, you spoke about experience, and I think this is key, right? We need to look at the consumer. So the consumer, the motivation, what makes them actually buy NFTs and fashion. And I think at the moment, the target groups that we have in the crypto community are very different to what we are used to work in the fashion industry. So there's, from my point of view, a slight disconnect. When I look at the gamers, when I look at the crypto investors, when I look at, you know, on the other hand, like the trendsetters of our industry. So how do we bring them together on one marketplace and make it, you know, a product for them that they would love to buy, experience? So art feels like they have an advantage. They had this big sales and everyone is now awake, you know, listening to what is happening in the art market. But for fashion, I think we are lacking. And therefore, so what do we have to do to attract, for example, the crypto audience?
Great question. Very challenging as well. And it's just like with anything, it always starts with awareness. You know, like how do we give awareness to crypto people about fashion? We need to educate them about the difference between a crappy white T-shirt versus a, you know, luxury item from a crafted brand. The same thing with fashion. We need to create awareness for the fashion consumers about what is the value of an NFT. Why should they be engaging in the gaming world? Why should they be engaging in the crypto world? And it's just like, where do you want to actually, you know, focus on? You know, like the fashion world, there's a lot of micro communities. Gaming world, a lot of micro communities. Crypto world, it's a micro community on its own, it feels like. But there's still different levels of understanding with people, and it's truly connecting to the people who have that awareness, who have that understanding, very much connecting to them, and have it try to go through that through word of mouth. Because let's say if a very well established player from the crypto industry embraces digital fashion for the craftsmanship that it's about, people will listen, and that's the way we're going to have that ripple effect where, you know, people are going to start understanding it. I've literally seen it with our company several times, where I talk to what I call a blockchain bro, you know, 1 week, and they're just kind of like, you know, think digital hoodies are the thing, and we're like, well, you know, digital hoodies are cool, but, you know, there's a much richer level to it, and they don't really connect to that narrative at that point. But then we'll talk to them 2 weeks later, and they're just like sold on digital fashion, and they've done like immense amounts of research and started really looking into like how fashion is actually becoming the next big thing in the crypto world, in the gaming world, and where they're all of a sudden like, okay, I'm totally a digital fashion believer right now. So it takes a little bit of time, and I think we all have kind of those similar experiences.
And I think to add to what Kerry is saying, I think there is something about digital fashion that is very attractive for male consumers. And I spend a lot of time with developers who identify as males. And it's interesting because they are not necessarily very much into fashion, but they do get very attracted by the notion of digital fashion, either because it feels smarter or because it feels, you know, they think it's more creative, but it takes away what I have noticed is that for them, it feels less superficial, as curious as it is. You know, when we sold the earrings with the Fabricant Artifact Studios on the Dematerialized, they were quite flamboyant. They were really big earrings. And a lot of the people from our crypto community, developers, they were posting pictures of themselves wearing the earrings. And I think this is so interesting. Like, they will never, ever in a million years wear an earring of that size in real life, but they will do it digitally, right? And I think there's something about it that feels really smart for them. They appreciate the craftsmanship, and I think, you know, they get excited to maybe own something that is more luxurious in the digital world, but they will never enter a luxury fashion store. Like, it's not for them. But, you know, experiencing DressX, experiencing the Dematerialized, experiencing the Fabricant is something that for them feel smart, speaks to their geek inside. And I think, you know, there's also like these gender boundaries that are also very interesting, right? Like the fact of like, well, there's really the genders in digital fashion. Do we really have a male collection and a female collection? It's more fluid, and I think it's just very attractive in general for those guys. And I think for us, to be quite frank, I think the biggest challenge for us will be to convert the very savvy fashion consumer. I think those are the hardest for us. I think the crypto consumers get it. I think the gamers totally get it. I just think the traditional fashion consumer really expects a higher level of fidelity in the experience, which I think technologically wise, we're not fully there, but we will get there. So it's a matter of time. And then we will convert those boys and girls. But I think right now, the gaming world and the crypto world, they are fascinated by the notion of digital fashion.
Yeah, and speaking about luxury shopping and consumption, I mean, we've just seen that Meta Yuko shopping center opened, and DressX has one of the stores there, so it's quite exciting. Can you share with us a little bit more about what are the experiences? So if I go there, what can I buy? How does it all work?
Natalia, probably you will want to answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer. Basically, that's something that has been opened just 2 days ago, and this is a store in a virtual world called Decentraland, and this is actually replicating the experience that we have in physical world when we enter the certain building in a certain location where we have to be at a certain place, and the setting is kind of 3-dimensional, so you can like walk there, see what's going on. It's a little bit of a gaming experience there. We put 6 items in this digital fashion store, virtual store. It's a first experience for us, and we will see how it goes. But that's definitely the new dimension for people who are familiar with virtual worlds to also discover digital fashion and also the NFTs, because we place not only the wearable fashion items, but also 3 of the NFT artworks that we've created in a collaboration with the Hana Zaruma, digital fashion artist. And this is the experience, and we will also add some of the wearables for Decentraland, so users will be able to actually dress up their avatars in this virtual world, not only their images in social media or videos, but also the avatars. And this is the next utility, and this is actually adding to the point to your previous question that I believe that fashion NFTs rise will be with providing more utility to that, because it's getting more personal. It's not just a collectible. To this example that Marjorie made about the developers, that they are actually were like buying and trying and wearing it and getting more kind of personal value out of it, rather than considering it as a collectible that you can just buy and then resell and to just earn some money on a difference of a price. There is more put into that, and this is something that is more sustainable long term from a business perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So we see virtual shopping centers. Then is this the future of the distribution model for digital fashion?
That's one of the distribution channels, and that's again, that's the beauty of digital fashion, that it has completely different and completely inclusive distribution kind of possibility and distribution channels. So that's one of the options of this future of digital fashion. Same as like blockchain technology is one of the technologies that will help to spread like digital fashion and make it actually available for everyone. Same as like AR technology is one of the technologies that will bring digital fashion to everyone's life, and there are other different technologies that will just bring this vision into life.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we are all discussing already internally if there will be a crypto fashion week instead of a real fashion week, and we all will send our avatars instead of ourselves. So potentially this is not something fantastical, but very much realistic, knowing what happened, you know, with COVID and all these situations, and that we have to explore new ways of connecting everyone. And obviously that's quite something interesting to look into the future. Okay, I think we are slightly running out of time. So if there are any questions over the chat, let me just see if there. No, it seems like so far not. Then let me just add on one more from my side. What is your personal outlook? So the challenges we have to overcome. Can I get a statement from each of you very quickly?
Start. Easy. I mean, it's an easy one. Utility is because we want people to, you know, engage with digital clothing. We want people to experience digital clothing, and interoperability. You know, what we talked about, that ownership, that you own that piece of item, and that you can use it in any virtual environment that you engage in. I think those are the two biggest hurdles to overcome.
Marjorie?
Yeah, I agree with Kerry. I think the first thing is about standardization of ownership. How do we own the assets, those NFTs, and how those assets actually look on chain? And then utility, making those experiences to be very, very rich and feeling even more spectacular than in somehow real life experiences. Like if it's not at least as good as real life, then I think we're falling short. So I think it's about the utility, post-purchase experience, the things that you can do with it, and understanding, you know, the dynamics of the digital economy are quite different from the dynamics of the traditional economy. So you might have a lot of competition and a lot of, you know, players simultaneously doing similar things, but driving towards the same goal and working together, which is kind of like not the way traditional industries have worked so far. So I think it is a lot around that. And I think, you know, making sure that we make these tools very accessible and that we demystify it, right? That it takes away like this complexity around, oh my God, what is an NFT and what is blockchain? I think this part should be completely invisible for the users. It should totally disappear, and just being about these amazing experiences that you have once you access an NFT, once you purchase it, and then the ability that you have to just own it and transact with it, right? And we always say that as long as a digital fashion item is not an NFT, it's like saying, you know, you go to the store, but you can never leave. Like you can buy whatever you want, but you have to stay in the store. So the NFT is the means of taking that digital fashion item outside of the store into the world, into the metaverse. So I think that competition and that collaboration in order to make sure that utility around the garments and the products is there is super important.
Yes,
Yes, I totally agree. And what I would add is also this simple thing that is called UX. So this user experience and simplicity. Right now, there are so many ways to consume any other things, and the service is kind of part of a product itself. So basically, perfect UX is also something that is super important.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. I tried to, put up my wallet. It was a disaster. It's just like so complicated, guys. If you're not new to this business, it's really not easy. So I feel for everyone who tries. So please give us a beautiful, easy experience to finally buy these awesome entities.
Yeah.
I would also like to add that I think on top of everything that has been said, to be honest, I don't see a big problem in the utility because like we have customers who are sending us the images, and basically they want to see themselves wearing on the images and on the content. So I believe the scalability is the problem, but that will come in a couple of years, and that will be over. Kind of that won't be a problem anymore, but we already see like 5 years ago, it will be hard to imagine how people would wear digital fashion. Now, when everyone is online on social media, etc., it's kind of easier to imagine the future, kind of to live in this present. But I think that there are still some challenges in the technology overall, like the technology of digital dressing and some other parts of technology. But it's the same was with like face and face filters 7 years ago. As soon as this technology became a commodity, kind of the entire world started to use that. So the same will happen with digital fashion, and we're just a couple of years from that moment, I think.
Yeah, perfect, perfect. So we will follow you all and hopefully do a lot of interesting collaborations. Please, whenever there's something new, think of Vogue Singapore as your home media, as your platform to push all the good news that and all the fantastic projects that you are doing in your industry. So for now, I think our time is up. And I hope that everyone on this call and listening to us took some interesting insights. If you want to get in touch with any of the speakers, please reach out through the CryptoArt Week organization. And from my side, I say thank you to the speakers. And I wish the CryptoArt Week a successful show, and all the best.
Thank you, Bettina.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.